If there's a ranking for bad luck on the way home, this man is definitely a champion. The plane had to make an emergency landing, the train broke down halfway, and he almost had a fatal car accident with a rental car. Finally finding a room, the two of them are left with only one bed. Does this plot sound familiar? Today, let's take a look at the 1987 American version of Planes, Trains and Automobiles. Old Bi is a planner at an advertising company. Today, he's meeting with a big client. The client is scrutinizing the girl in the advertisement, looking her over from every angle, feeling that there's something unusual about her. Old Bi is getting anxious because he needs to catch a 6 o'clock flight. Thanksgiving is just around the corner. He promised his wife he'd be home by 9 tonight. As soon as the meeting ends, he rushes to catch his flight. A colleague with a jinxed mouth sends him off with a parting comment. The line for taxis stretches for miles, so Old Bi tries his luck elsewhere. He actually spots an empty cab. However, a young guy across the street sees it too. After locking eyes, they decide to compete. Like unleashed wild dogs, they both dash madly towards the taxi. After an intense 100-meter sprint, Old Bi falls flat on his face in front of the cab. The young guy successfully snatches the car, and when Old Bi turns around, he sees it's just a broken suitcase. He walks away cursing under his breath. At this moment, he spots another cab, but someone else has already gotten to it first. Old Bi approaches and negotiates. Could you be kind enough to let me have it? I'm in a hurry to catch a 6 o'clock flight. Old Bi resorts to money to negotiate. After some haggling, he finally secures the deal for $75. But as soon as he turns around, the car is snatched by someone else, the same guy with the suitcase. Old Bi is furious. He chases after them at 80 miles per hour. Not only does he fail to catch up, but the suitcase is almost crushed to pieces. In the end, Old Bi takes a bus to the airport. It's almost 5:60, but luckily, the flight is delayed. However, the unfortunate part is that Lin Zuo, the guy who snatched his cab, is a chatty salesman for shower curtain rings. He introduces himself right away. He's quite the talker, and Old Bi is grinding his teeth in frustration. To make matters worse, Lin Zuo takes off his socks, which are like a biological weapon, the smell permeating even through the screen. Finally, the plane quiets down. Most people were asleep, and Old Bi wanted to take the opportunity to read a bit, but found himself in an awkward dilemma. Suddenly, Little Fatty opened his eyes. I bet $6 and 2 eggs that the plane won't make it to Chicago tonight. Old Bi didn't pay attention, thinking he'd be reunited with his family in just 2 hours. However, Little Fatty's words seemed prophetic. Suddenly, it started snowing heavily in Chicago, and the plane had to make an emergency landing in Des Moines. Old Bi first reported the situation to his wife and asked Little Fatty to check on the flight status. Little Fatty directly replied that we definitely won't be leaving here tonight. Once again, Little Fatty's words came true. The airport officials informed everyone that all flights were cancelled. At this point, Old Bi thought about booking a room. However, all the hotels were fully booked. Little Fatty had a customer here who owned a motel. If Old Bi was willing to pay for a cab, he could take him there. Old Bi looked around, and the person sleeping on the floor next to him agreed. Little Fatty's suggestion. However, a terrible scene unfolded at the motel. 2 big men checked into the hotel, and unfortunately, there was only 1 room left. 1 room is fine. However, even more unfortunate was that there was only 1 big bed in the room, and the 2 could only exchange awkward smiles. Old Bi couldn't take it. Little Fatty's various bad habits, like throwing towels on the floor and spilling beer all over the bed. Even when he was asleep, he wasn't quiet. Old Bi was about to explode with anger, venting all his frustrations from the trip. He scolded Little Fatty without using a single curse word, leaving him speechless and with slightly red eyes. He even looked a bit pitiful. If it makes you feel better, go ahead and say it. Anyway, I'm not going to change. Because I like myself, my wife likes me, and my clients like me because I'm sincere and consistent inside and out. Old Bi suddenly felt he might have gone too far. Maybe they cleared the air, as both went back to bed. They slept like logs, so much so that they didn't even notice a thief entering the room. The next day, at dawn, something magical happened. Somehow, the 2 ended up hugging each other, holding hands, and sleeping soundly. When they woke up, they were extremely embarrassed and quickly made some small talk to ease the tension. Old Bi wanted to wash his face to wake up, but when he splashed water on his face, something didn't smell right. Looking down, it was Little Fatty's socks soaking. Quickly grabbed a towel to wipe it, but the smell was off. Upon closer inspection, it was Little Fatty's underwear. Old Bi was completely speechless. During breakfast, Little Fatty suggested that taking the train would be more reliable. When it was time to pay, they found out the wallet had been emptied by a thief last night. Little Fatty invited a friend's son to pick him up. Upon meeting, they exchanged friendly greetings. The 2 of them made their way to the train station in the chilly weather, almost freezing into ice sculptures. Fortunately, the thief only took the money and didn't take the credit card. Old Bi used the credit card to buy 2 tickets. Due to the tight seating, they couldn't get seats together. Old Bi couldn't hide his joy inside, finally able to get rid of Little Fatty. Sometimes people become what they initially disliked. On the train, Old Bi, free from Little Fatty, happily became a painting. Old Bai couldn't stop talking to the beautiful woman next to him. Just as he was falling asleep, the train suddenly broke down. Everyone had to get off the train and walk to find a taxi. On the way, he luckily ran into Little Fatty again. The two of them got on a bus, but it couldn't go directly to Chicago. They needed to transfer at St. Louis. After getting off the bus at home, Little Fatty used his silver tongue to sell a batch of bathroom rings. With the money he earned, he treated Old Bai to a big meal. Old Bai expressed his thoughts very tactfully. If we go separately, we might get home faster, Little Fatty. Although Fatty wasn't stupid, he got up and left directly. Old Bai took a bus to the car rental place, only to find that the car he rented had been driven away by someone else. And the bus that brought him there had also left. Old Bai was about to go crazy. He returned to the car rental company in a mess, but the receptionist was constantly on the phone, which made Old Bai so angry that he went up and started yelling. Then, he was kicked out looking dejected. On the road, he got into a direct confrontation with another man. Old Bai fell to the ground on the spot. When he opened his eyes, he saw a familiar face again. It was Little Fatty who had rented a car. The two of them hit the road together once more. Due to the long journey, they had to take turns driving. When Little Fatty was driving, Old Bai fell asleep in the car. Little Fatty smoked, sang, and swayed to the music. After a while, he felt a bit hot. He wanted to take off his clothes, which almost sent the two fatties off the road. When driving, never take off your clothes. As the driver, Little Fatty wanted to take off his jacket. He tried the right side, but it got stuck on the seat. So he tried the left side. Unfortunately, it got stuck again. Suddenly, both his hands were trapped and couldn't move. At the critical moment, Little Fatty showed his veteran driving skills by using his lower body to drive. The car suddenly spun around at an unknown angle and then came to a stable stop. Old Bai was startled awake from his sleep. Little Fatty pretended nothing had happened and continued driving. However, he didn't notice that the spin had put them in the wrong direction. Then, two large trucks came from the opposite direction. The two of them drove through the middle with sparks flying. Luckily, the car was only scratched and there was no major damage. After surviving the ordeal, they chatted by the roadside, saying that surviving a disaster brings good fortune. However, sometimes that's not the case. Their car caught fire. It turned out that Little Fatty's cigarette butt hadn't been thrown out and fell onto the back seat. Watching the car engulfed in flames, Old Bai instead laughed heartily. I wonder how you'll return the car now. Hearing this, Little Fatty also started laughing. I rented the car with your credit card, and your credit card is still in the car. Then they drove the burnt convertible back on the road. Not sure if it was to show that American cars are of good quality, but even in that burnt state, it could still drive normally. With the seats still smoking, the two arrived at a motel. Old Bai took out the credit card that had been burnt to a crisp. The owner didn't recognize it at all. Old Bai then offered the only $17 he had and a watch on his wrist as collateral to get a room. Little Fatty only had a digital watch on him. He could only return to the convertible. The cold snow slapped his face randomly, and by dawn, he would probably become an ice sculpture. Old Bai, feeling sorry, called Little Fatty into the room. With a pile of snacks and a few bottles of liquor, they chatted about everything under the sun. Little Fatty said that the word, love, wasn't enough to express his love for his wife. Old Bai suddenly felt that Little Fatty wasn't so bad after all, and even found him somewhat endearing. They even set off again in the convertible, leaving passers-by stunned. On the road, they were stopped by the traffic police for speeding. I just want to ask, what is this thing you're driving? Their car was impounded, with Little Fatty's help. They successfully caught a ride and finally, after much hardship, reached the last stop on their journey home. The train arrived, and the two parted reluctantly. Thinking of the children at home, thinking of the wife at home, Lao Bai couldn't help but smile. He recalled the bits and pieces of their journey on the train. The more Lao Bai thought about it, the more something felt off. Xiao Pang said he loved his wife very much, so why hadn't he gone home in 8 years? With this question in mind, Lao Bai returned to the station. Xiao Pang was still sitting there alone. It was then that Xiao Pang told the truth. His wife had passed away 8 years ago. He no longer had a home. Lao Bai was momentarily at a loss for words. His wife had been gone for 8 years, yet he still loved her deeply. He even brought joy to those around him. He truly was an extraordinary person. Lao Bai invited Xiao Pang to celebrate the festival at his home and introduced him to his family. The film ended amidst everyone's laughter and joy. The movie, Adversity, reveals true feelings. I hope you all have a smooth journey. Alright, if you want to see more great movie reviews, please follow me. Bye bye.
Yeah!